Imagine just for a moment that a mad scientist has invented a time machine and is forcing you to choose a random period in the Mesozoic era to travel to. Many of the options available would undoubtedly lead to a grim end, but whatever you do, you absolutely, positively should not pick 150 million years ago. This was an age when instant death lurked around nearly every corner. Dinosaurs, as was the norm in the Mesozoic, ruled the land. But even by dinosaur standards, the ones that roamed the earth back then were especially terrifying. Paleontologists often regard this period as a golden age for colossal sauropods and meat-loving theropods. But here's the kicker. Even if you could snap your fingers and make the dinosaurs disappear, 150 million years ago would still be a big, resounding nope, with the land, oceans, and skies hiding secrets that were, let's just say, far from friendly to life. Welcome to the Late Jurassic. During this time, even a map wouldn't help you much, as Earth's land masses were almost unrecognizable compared to today. North America was the most familiar, at least maintaining a shape similar to its current form. But that's where familiarity ends. To the south lay a giant merged landmass that some consider the last supercontinent, Gondwana. This ancient landmass included South America, the Arabian Peninsula, India, Antarctica, and Australia, forming the largest continent of the Late Jurassic. It covered nearly 1/6 of Earth's surface and would have appeared from space as a massive blob of land. Yet even Gondwana wasn't the most alien-looking continent of the time. That title goes to Laurasia, a giant continent comprising present-day Europe, Greenland, and parts of Asia. Unlike the rest of the Earth, Laurasia was almost entirely covered by expansive waters that split and isolated much of the land, leading to the creation of smaller islands rather than large landmasses. Europe, in particular, was an island paradise, bearing almost no resemblance to its current state. Its location was also quite different, being closer to North America than it is today. Meanwhile, China was right next to Iran and Turkey, but extremely far from India. The geography was confusing, to say the least. Fortunately, Late Jurassic oceanography was simpler, with only two major bodies of water, the Pacific Ocean and the Tethys Ocean. At the time, the Tethys was already ancient, having existed for over 100 million years. It covered the eastern hemisphere and had recently experienced significant tectonic activity, raising sea levels and submerging large parts of Laurasia. Despite this tectonic boost, it was still smaller than the younger, yet still 50-million-year-old Pacific Ocean, which dominated the western hemisphere and continued to expand as time went on. The Late Jurassic also witnessed the emergence of another body of water we all know, the Atlantic Ocean. However, back then, it resembled a sea more than anything else, nearly entirely surrounded by land. The Atlantic's temperatures were also remarkably warmer than they are today, and this was a global trend, with seawater averaging 32.1 degrees Celsius or 90 degrees Fahrenheit, about 25% hotter than the current average. Even in the deepest parts of the Pacific, temperatures hovered around 17 degrees Celsius or 63 degrees Fahrenheit, akin to lukewarm tap water. This intense heat is often attributed to increased tectonic activity at the time, which led to highly active volcanoes spewing massive amounts of CO2 into the water. Paleontologists are aware of a few of these now extinct volcanoes, including Earth's largest known volcano, Tamu Massif. This absolute behemoth lies 1,600 kilometers or 990 miles east of Japan and covers more seafloor than the state of California, while standing almost twice as tall as Mount St. Helens. During its active period, Tamu Massif would have made the oceans more acidic and heated up the atmosphere, leading to warmer conditions on land as well. In fact, 150 million years ago was likely the warmest period in the entire Jurassic, with average daily temperatures of 20 degrees Celsius or 68 degrees Fahrenheit, nearly 15% warmer than today. With this heat, Earth experienced climatic conditions not seen for nearly 50 million years. Both the northern and southern hemispheres witnessed significant amounts of dry biomes, including deserts and savannas, which could be quite harsh on animals, especially during the distinct dry seasons when severe droughts were not uncommon. Closer to the equator, things were a bit more forgiving, as the drier ecosystems gave way to lush tropical forests that covered much of North Africa. However, the most temperate conditions were not found there, but rather near and within the polar regions, which back then were not brutally cold tundras, but temperate biomes similar to modern-day Central Europe. The polar regions were so much warmer that they didn't even have ice sheets or glaciers, leading to an abundance of life. Even in the harsher arid climates closer to the equator, life found a way, with the richest known formations actually hailing from these brutal areas. Dinosaurs thrived during this time, enjoying a level of diversification never before seen. Theropods, sauropods, Neornithischians, and armored dinosaurs were the most established groups, with multiple species from each often found within a single ecosystem, resulting in a level of chaos rarely seen during the Mesozoic. This chaos is perhaps best demonstrated by the Morrison Formation, a vast North American biosphere spanning 13 states and consisting of arid savannas, forests, and troublelands. So far, over 40 dinosaurs are known to have lived there, including at least 10 different theropods, nearly all of which were big enough to hunt human-sized animals. Yet, unlike the Cretaceous, the Morrison's most dominant carnivores were not tyrannosaurs, which had yet to evolve, but rather Allosauridae. The most abundant of them all was the Allosaurus, often dubbed the Lion of the Jurassic due to its striking appearance. It was a nearly unstoppable predator, equipped with razor-sharp teeth and a blood-inducing slashing bite that allowed it to hunt a wide range of herbivores. Studies suggest that it may have even hunted in packs. Like Allosaurus, this beast was a member of the Allosauridae family and could weigh up to 5 tons, equivalent to nearly 4 adult giraffes. In addition to classification, it was similar to Allosaurus in many ways. Both had robust arms, sharp claws, serrated teeth, and esteemed crests, but differed in vertebrae shape and, obviously, body size. Alongside these two, there were still more carnivores that called the Morrison Formation home, with the most well-known, including Ceratosaurus, Torvosaurus, and the mysterious Edmarca rex. Both Torvosaurus and Edmarca rex were members of the Megalosauridae family, and again they were gigantic, more comparable to Saurophaganax than other carnivores. Large specimens of Torvosaurus weighed around 4 tons, while Edmarca rex could have weighed as much as Saurophaganax. On the other hand, Ceratosaurus, while ferocious, was a large step down from the giant carnivores mentioned, with large adults weighing similar to polar bears, so obviously still not small by any means. Regardless, many still consider it the underdog of the Jurassic, often overlooking its agility and deadly bite, which made it a highly successful predator. Most also forget that giant size was the exception, not the rule, as most Morrison predators were medium-sized, like Ceratosaurus, or even smaller. For example, troodontids and early primitive relatives of tyrannosaurids made up the bulk of these smaller carnivores, seldom standing above a human's waist. This might make you wonder how such small carnivores survived in an ecosystem ruled by behemoths. The answer is simple: niching. Instead of competing with each other, predators occupied different ecological niches, as exemplified by Ceratosaurus and Allosaurus, with the former found near bodies of water, while Allosaurus preferred open terrestrial spaces. This helped maintain peace in a theropod-rich environment, but peace wasn't always possible. North America and much of the Earth experienced severe droughts that drove nearly all creatures to violence. Fossilized remains indicate extreme amounts of cannibalism, theropod-on-theropod violence, and scavenging. During these times, being smaller was an advantage, as it meant fewer calories were needed to survive. This, of course, applied to small herbivores as well, mainly composed of Neornithischians. More than 5 kinds are known from 150 million years ago, but a couple of the more common ones would have been the cougar-sized Dryosaurus and the larger Camptosaurus, which weighed about half a ton. Despite their size differences, both had similar diets composed of ground-level plants, and the two also tragically shared a lack of defenses, with speed being their only real plan, A Plan B and Plan C. However, this problem was not common for other herbivores, as many became ruthless themselves to ward off theropods, like the iconic Stegosaurus, the largest non-sauropod around. Exceptional adults reached 9 meters or 30 feet in length and weighed 5.5 tons. Not to mention, Stegosaurus also had a thagomizer. While the name might sound amusing, this weapon would have been anything but funny for potential predators. The thagomizer consisted of large, bony spikes attached to the end of its tail, turning it into a potent weapon that could pierce the bones of attacking carnivores, as evidenced by fossils of one unlucky Allosaurus. And Stegosaurus wasn't the only herbivore with a good theropod deterrent in these lands. Fresh on the scene was Mimuropelta, one of the oldest known ankylosaurs. It was considerably smaller than its later relatives, with adults only weighing 562 kilograms, or 1,239 pounds. Yet it had the trademark heavy armor that made ankylosaurs famous, with osteoderms spreading across its entire upper body. These osteoderms varied in size and sometimes had sharpened edges, particularly when located near vulnerable spots. Sadly, though, armor was no thagomizer, and numerous remains of this ankylosaur were found with signs of predation by theropods. Such a fate presumably extended to other existing armored dinosaurs as well, including another ankylosaur, Gargoylosaurus, and the stegosaurid Alcovosaurus. At this point, you might be tired of hearing about so many dinosaurs, but to really drive home the fact that this was one of their golden ages, you cannot forget about the most abundant dinosaurs of them all, the sauropods. In fact, 150 million years ago may have been the apex period for this group, as they were typically the most common dinosaurs, with Camarasaurus holding the title of the most abundant animal in the Western Hemisphere. But it was by no means alone. A mix of different sauropod families ran rampant, with the two key players being the Diplodocids and the Macronarians. Both of these families were powerhouses with multiple iconic members, including household names like Brachiosaurus, Diplodocus, Supersaurus, Barosaurus, Brontosaurus, Apatosaurus. And the honorable mention, Marapunosaurus, which belonged to neither family but was absolutely massive. In reality, every sauropod alive then, including those unmentioned, was pretty massive, with the smallest weighing 13 tons while the largest sat around 70 tons. Naturally, with such incredible fauna, many have been amazed by the Morrison Formation since its discovery. Yet, incredibly, the Morrison wasn't exactly unique, as much of the world had similar ecosystems where the same groups of dinosaurs dominated. In some places, even the exact same dinosaurs could be found. For instance, if you tried to escape the Allosaurus, Ceratosaurus, or Torvosaurus by fleeing to Europe, you'd still run into them. On the flip side, you could also experience some absolutely great sauropod sightseeing in Gondwana, where evidence of Brachiosaurus, Barosaurus, and Camarasaurus was found. Even dinosaurs unique to other landmasses still tended to follow the same trends seen in the Morrison, with many having counterparts across the globe. For example, Tanzania had the titanic Giraffatitan, which played a similar ecological role to Brachiosaurus. Additionally, Tanzania also saw the likes of Kentrosaurus, the Stegosaurian counterpart, and close relative of Stegosaurus. In Europe, the exact situation was seen again, with sauropods like Oceanodontan and stegosaurs like Centaurus populating the land. Where Gondwana and Europe differed, however, was in the presence of a new kind of theropod family not yet seen in North America, or anywhere else for that matter, the Carcharodontosauridae. These theropods were characterized by high neural spines, proportionally long arms, and long, narrow skulls. The oldest and first of them to evolve was Plesiosaurs, which resided in Tanzania and weighed up to 1.65 tons, likely hunting a mix of stegosaurs and juvenile sauropods. Strangely, in China, which wasn't far from Europe, Carcharodontosauridae weren't found, although they had their very own unique apex predator, Yangchuanosaurus. Following the trend, this monstrous theropod was nearly as long as the largest Torvosaurus and weighed up to 3.4 tons, making it the largest predator in all of Asia. From a distance, you might mistake it for a member of the Allosaurus family, as the two were closely related and shared many similar features. However, Yangchuanosaurus was not an Allosauridae member, but rather a Metriacanthosaurid, which in Greek means moderately spined lizards, so it's not surprising that this group's defining trait was, well, moderately sized spines. Beyond the uniqueness of Yangchuanosaurus, Asia was again much like the rest of the world, with the four main dinosaur groups reigning supreme and bearing multiple species. Some of the most well-known that lived at the time included Momentosaurus, Yangchuanosaurus, Dinosaurus, and Leishanosaurus. And it wasn't just the dinosaurs that would have made your eyes widen, as the Late Jurassic also accommodated a wide range of non-dinosaurs, with the most dominant being Crocodiliformes. Like dinosaurs, they came in a variety of sizes and inhabited diverse habitats, but were usually on the smaller side comparatively. Most, like the gator-sized Amphicautilus, were semi-aquatic hunting fish, amphibians, and turtles that dwelled near them. But a few were fully terrestrial and could appear fairly nightmarish, as seen with Halapis, who had slender, skinny limbs, giving it an odd, unsettling appearance. But you wouldn't have to worry, because Halapis was a tiny creature that rarely grew taller than a boot and mostly stuck to insects and other small prey. The other terrestrial crocs were quite small too, likely a result of living in the shadow of dinosaurs. Another group that encountered this size problem was our very own ancestors, the Mammaliformes. By now, they'd been around for over 100 million years and were well adapted for a mix of lifestyles, with older fossils showing that some had developed the ability to glide, climb trees, and be semi-aquatic. Their diets were also quite versatile, with some specializing in plants, while others nibbled on meat or dabbled in both areas, as seen with the omnivorous Gomphodontosuchus, which may even have scavenged on dinosaurs. Yet it was still like other mammaliforms, small as on average, these creatures were no bigger than a shrew, making them hard to notice amongst so many titans. Nonetheless, there was one group that wasn't exactly giant, but was hard to miss, the Pterosaurs. These winged reptiles had established control of the skies roughly 80 million years prior to this point and flew mostly unchallenged. Interestingly, though, they weren't very populous, as only a few remains from the time are known. Yet their bones were geologically widespread, indicating a successful conquest across a significant portion of Earth. Typically, late Jurassic pterosaurs seem to have preferred marine and shoreline habitats, where they could fill their stomachs with fish, insects, shellfish, and carrion. It's also been hypothesized that the largest pterosaurs could have actively hunted certain terrestrial creatures, with the biggest pterosaur being Leucognathus. This pterosaur lived in Europe and was a leviathan compared to its contemporaries, with an estimated wingspan of 3.6 meters or 12 feet, which along with sharp straight teeth could have enabled it to hunt other pterosaurs, considering that most were less than half its size. And as the king of flyers, Leucognathus didn't have much to worry about. Although it wasn't alone, as along with pterosaurs, bird-like dinosaurs had also managed to take flight. In that day and age, they were still a novelty and very rare, with only one kind being known from that specific era, the Archaeopteryx. This dinosaur is monumental to paleontology as the earliest known creature capable of powered flight. There are other contenders for this title too, dating back to 165 million years ago. But thus far, many paleontologists argue over the classification of these older animals. The Archaeopteryx would have used its flying abilities to hunt small prey, including reptiles and insects, and escape predators, as it was a tiny creature similar in size to a modern-day magpie. With so much life around and above you, it probably won't surprise you to learn that the waters were home to many creatures as well, with the major difference being that while a lot of land creatures were wondrous, the oceans and seas were home to pure nightmares, most notably the Plesiosaurs. These marine reptiles were distinguished by flat bodies, short tails, and four flippers with a cosmopolitan distribution, meaning they could be found worldwide. They greatly varied in size, and many were apex predators, with the most terrifying of the bunch being the Plesiosaur family. While we commonly imagine Plesiosaurs with long, narrow necks, Plesiosaurs were the ones with short necks and massive skulls filled with sharp, conical teeth, which allowed them to hunt down medium and large-sized prey. You've probably heard of the most famous one, the Liopleurodon, but it had actually been extinct for 5 million years by this time. Not to worry, though, as the Late Jurassic found an even bigger, more terrifying replacement, the Plesiosaurus. Adults of this species were among the largest ever recorded, reaching up to 10 meters or 33 feet in length and weighing 5 tons. With their size, they easily killed whatever they could catch, including what we consider the apex predators of modern oceans, sharks. But that's not to say sharks were chumps back then. They were still formidable predators, but no match for the sheer size and power of the Plesiosaurs. Sharks were still a problem for smaller animals, though, including fish and another famous staple of Mesozoic oceans, the Ichthyosaurs. While Ichthyosaurs had been true giants during the Triassic and early Jurassic, they had experienced a decline in size by this period, mainly due to competition with the Plesiosaurs. However, this battle was far from one-sided, as shallow seas and open oceans still housed plenty of different ichthyosaur species that filled various niches, some reaching up to 7 meters or 23 feet in length, which is crazy to think about when considering that Triassic ichthyosaurs were sometimes almost 4 times bigger, making them absolutely terrifying. But don't panic just yet. This time period had one more trick up its sleeve to give you nightmares: the Thalattosuchians, commonly nicknamed the marine crocodiles. In reality, they weren't true crocodiles, but rather primitive distant relatives. Though they superficially resembled modern crocs, their limbs and tails had evolved into flippers in some species, allowing them to swim efficiently. Like many other animals, these marine crocs were found globally, and in some locations were apex predators. They had compressed, serrated teeth that allowed them to shear chunks of flesh off their prey, which consisted of fish, ichthyosaurs, small plesiosaurs, and turtles. The 2 largest living members, Dacosaurus and Pterosaurs, may have hunted large animals too. Coincidentally, Pterosaurs was actually the largest marine croc we know of, with adults being equal to the largest ichthyosaurs in length, just one more reason to avoid Earth 150 million years ago.